My name is Gloria, 35 years old, standing alone at my father's funeral. The church feels cold despite the summer heat. I barely recognize these people anymore. My brother Thomas glares from across the room, whispering to our cousins. She's just here for the money. Dad was going to cut her off anyway. His words sting like venom. The funeral ends, and suddenly everyone goes silent. A lawyer walks in holding a USB drive. My father's face appears on the screen, and he says three words that change everything. Let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe to hear how those three words shattered my family's secrets. I grew up in a charming small town in Connecticut. Our house on Maple Street was the envy of the neighborhood, with its sprawling lawn and white picket fence. Dad, Richard Parker, was a respected local businessman who built his furniture empire from scratch. Mom Amanda was the kindness that held our family together. And then there was my brother Thomas, 5 years older than me, and always the favorite child, at least in his own mind. My childhood memories are filled with Dad's booming laughter as he would swing me up onto his shoulders. My little glorious Gloria, he would call me, his eyes crinkling at the corners. We had a special bond. Every Sunday morning, we would go to the local diner for pancakes, just the two of us, while Mom and Thomas slept in. He would tell me stories about his childhood and his dreams for the business. One day, all of this will be for you and your brother, he would say, pointing to the factory visible from our breakfast spot. I built this for my family. Thomas always resented our special time together. He would pout when we returned home, complaining to Mom that it wasn't fair. Dad loves her more, he would say, just loud enough for me to hear from the next room. He never takes me anywhere special. It wasn't true, of course. Dad spent plenty of time with Thomas, teaching him about the business, taking him to baseball games. But Thomas had a talent for twisting the truth, making himself the victim in any situation. Everything changed when I turned 13. Mom got sick. Cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months, but my warrior mother fought for 2 years. During those dark days, our family began to fracture in ways that would never fully heal. Dad became a ghost in our home, spending every waking moment either at Mom's hospital bedside or losing himself in work. Thomas, then 18, stepped up to help run the household, which mainly consisted of ordering me around and reporting my every mistake to Dad. Gloria broke curfew again. He would announce even when I was only 5 minutes late because the bus was delayed. Gloria got another C in math. He would declare, conveniently forgetting to mention my A's in everything else. When Mom finally passed something in, Dad broke. The laughter vanished from our home. Our Sunday breakfast became a distant memory. Dad threw himself into the family business with a vengeance, as if he could outwork his grief. Thomas graduated from high school and immediately joined the company. They became a unit, and I became an outsider in my own home. Dad would come home late, exhausted, with barely a word for me. Thomas would fill his ear with stories about how I was acting out, exaggerating normal teenage behavior into something sinister. "She doesn't even care about the company, Dad," I overheard Thomas saying one night. "She wants to do art. What a waste of the Parker legacy." It was true that I loved art and design, but I never said I wouldn't be part of the family business. I imagined designing beautiful furniture pieces that would blend artistry with function. But Thomas made sure Dad only heard what Thomas wanted him to hear. By my senior year of high school, the distance between Dad and me felt unbridgeable. When I got accepted to California College of the Arts, Dad's disappointment was palpable. "The University of Connecticut has a fine business program," he said, his voice flat. "You could live at home, learn the business properly." "Dad, this is my dream," I pleaded. "I could still help with the company. I could do design work." "Design work," Thomas scoffed from the doorway. "Because that's what Parker Furniture needs, not someone who understands business operations." Dad sighed heavily. "If you go to California, you're on your own. I won't pay for you to run away from your responsibilities." I went anyway. I worked 2 jobs to pay tuition, took out loans, and survived on ramen noodles. The phone calls home became fewer and more strained. Each holiday return was more uncomfortable than the last, with Thomas constantly at Dad's side, whispering in his ear whenever I entered a room. In my junior year, I made one last attempt to bridge the gap. I created a beautiful portfolio of furniture designs specifically for Parker Furniture, a modern collection that would appeal to younger customers while honoring our traditional craftsmanship. I mailed it to Dad directly at his office, hoping Thomas wouldn't intercept it. Dad called me that night, the first time he had initiated contact in months. "These are good, Gloria," he said, his voice softer than I had heard it in years. "You have talent." My heart soared. I was thinking I could intern at the company next summer, work on implementing some of these designs. There was a long pause, then the sound of a door opening in the background. Thomas's voice muffled but recognizable. Dad's tone changed immediately. "Listen, Gloria, these are nice drawings, but we have professional designers. Focus on graduating. We'll talk about the rest later." We never did. By the time I graduated, Thomas had convinced Dad to sell the design department to a third-party contractor. There was no place for me in the family business anymore, not that there ever had been, as long as Thomas was there. After college, I built a life for myself in San Francisco. My graphic design career took off, and I found a community of friends who became the family I desperately needed. I tried to maintain a relationship with Dad through phone calls and emails, but each attempt felt like shouting into a void. "Dad, I got a promotion at the agency," I shared during one of our monthly calls. "That's nice," he replied distantly. "Thomas just secured $1 million contract with a hotel chain." Always comparing, always finding me wanting. When I met Jackson Williams, a kind and talented architect who saw the real me, I felt truly seen for the first time in years. We fell in love quickly, his steady warmth healing parts of me I didn't know were still broken. The day I called Dad to tell him about our engagement, Thomas answered his phone. "Dad's busy right now," he said, though I could hear Dad asking who was calling in the background. "Please, Thomas, I just want to tell him I'm getting married." "I'll pass along the message," he said, and hung up. Dad sent a brief congratulatory email a week later. No offer to come to the wedding, no questions about Jackson or our plans. Just 3 sentences ending with, "Best wishes for your future together." I sent the wedding invitation anyway, with a handwritten note telling Dad how much it would mean to have him walk me down the aisle. The RSVP card came back with the unable to attend box checked. No explanation, no personal note. On my wedding day, as Jackson's father embraced me and told me how proud he was to have me join their family, I couldn't stop the tears from falling. Everyone assumed they were tears of joy, but Jackson knew better. He held me close that night, as I mourned the father who couldn't love me enough to overcome his son's manipulation. "Your dad's missing out on knowing an incredible woman," Jackson whispered. "That's his loss, not yours." I tried to believe him, but the rejection cut deep. We built a beautiful life together. Jackson's architecture firm flourished, and my freelance design business grew enough that I could be selective about clients. When our daughter Lily was born 3 years later, I sent Dad a birth announcement with Lily's photo. He sent a Parker Furniture gift card. Not a personal gift he had selected, not a visit to meet his first grandchild, just a company gift card with a typed note signed Richard Parker. Not even Dad, or your father. The distance between us had become so vast, he couldn't even claim the title anymore. Every birthday, every Christmas, I would reach out. Sometimes Dad would respond with brief pleasantries. More often, Thomas would call back, ostensibly relaying messages from Dad, but really just checking to make sure I wasn't trying to worm my way back into the business. When Lily turned 5, I made one last attempt at reconciliation. I flew back to Connecticut alone, having warned Jackson that it probably wouldn't go well. "Dad, please," I said, sitting across from him in his office, where he had reluctantly agreed to meet me. "I don't want anything from you except a relationship. Lily deserves to know her grandfather." For a moment, something shifted in his eyes. He looked older, tired, in a way I hadn't noticed in photos. "I would like to meet her," he said quietly. Before I could respond, Thomas burst into the office. "The Hendersons are here for their meeting," he announced, though I later learned they weren't expected for another hour. "Sorry, Gloria, business calls." Dad stood up the moment broken. "Perhaps another time," he said, not meeting my eyes. There never was another time. I flew home devastated, but finally accepting that Thomas had won. He had successfully cut me out of Dad's life, and nothing I could do would change that. 3 years passed without any real contact. Then Angela, my old high school friend who still lived in town, called with the news. Gloria, your dad has cancer, stage 4. Thomas has been keeping it quiet, but everyone at the company knows. The pain of learning about my father's illness from a friend rather than family was almost physical. I called Dad's house immediately, but the housekeeper said he couldn't come to the phone. I called his office, but his secretary said he was in meetings all day. I even tried Thomas, who answered on the first ring. What do you want, Gloria? Is it true about Dad? A long pause. Yes, but he doesn't want to see you. He's made that clear. The stress would only make his condition worse. Thomas, please, don't do this, not now. I'm protecting our father, he said, his voice cold. Something you never cared to do when you abandoned the family. I sent flowers to the hospital with a card offering to come if Dad wanted to see me. I never heard back. For the next 8 months, I existed in a strange limbo, getting updates on my father's health from Angela and other hometown connections, never directly from family. Then the call came that changed everything. I was in the middle of a client meeting when my phone lit up with a Connecticut number I didn't recognize. I excused myself to take it, thinking it might be one of Dad's doctors. Is this Gloria Parker Williams? A formal male voice asked. Yes, who's calling? This is Elliot Harrington, your father's attorney. I'm afraid I have some difficult news. Your father passed away early this morning. The world tilted sideways. I gripped the edge of the conference room table to steady myself. Ms. Williams, are you there? Yes, I managed. I'm here. I just, we weren't, I didn't know it was so imminent. The end came rather suddenly, Mr. Harrington said, his voice softening slightly. He had been in remission, but there was an unexpected complication. Remission. Dad had been in remission and no one had told me. He could have had months of feeling better, months when we might have reconnected. And Thomas had kept that from me too. The funeral will be on Saturday, Mr. Harrington continued. Your father left explicit instructions that you should be notified immediately upon his passing, and that you should attend the funeral. That stopped me cold. He asked for me specifically. Yes, Ms. Williams, quite emphatically, in fact. There are some matters we'll need to discuss afterward as well. I hung up in a daze and called Jackson immediately. After explaining what had happened, I voiced my doubts. I don't know if I should go. Dad shut me out for years. Why would he want me there now? Because he was dying, and dying men often see things more clearly, Jackson said gently. I think you should go, for closure if nothing else. What about Thomas? He'll make it miserable. You can handle Thomas. You're not that hurt 20-year-old anymore. You're a strong, successful woman with a beautiful family of your own. Go say goodbye to your father. Don't let Thomas steal that from you too. So I booked a flight to Connecticut, arranged for Jackson's parents to watch Lily, and packed a black dress I never thought I'd need for this purpose. Jackson drove me to the airport, holding my hand tightly before I went through security. Call me anytime, day or night, he said. And remember, whatever happens with the family business or the will, that's not why you're going. You're going to honor your father and find peace. The flight felt endless. I flipped through old photos on my phone, lingering on the few I had of Dad and me in happier times. There was one from my 10th birthday, Dad lifting me onto his shoulders to put the star on top of our Christmas tree. His smile was so wide, so genuine. What had happened to that man who loved his daughter so completely? When I arrived in Connecticut, the weight of memories pressed down on me. I rented a car and drove through town past the Parker Furniture Factory, past my old high school, finally pulling up to the small boutique hotel where I'd booked a room. I couldn't face staying in my childhood home, not with Thomas there. As I was checking in, the receptionist gave me a strange look of recognition. Parker. Any relation to Richard Parker? He was my father. I said, the past tense feeling foreign on my tongue. I'm so sorry for your loss. He was a wonderful man. My husband has worked at the factory for 20 years. Mr. Parker helped us with the down payment on our house when Tommy was born. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. These glimpses of Dad's generosity to others only highlighted what I had lost. In my hotel room, I received a text from an unknown number. Dad's lawyer said you're in town. Viewing is at Henderson Funeral Home tomorrow at 3. Try not to make a scene. Thomas. Not even a pretense of family warmth. Just Thomas marking his territory. I arrived at the funeral home early, hoping to have a moment alone with Dad before others arrived. The director led me to the private viewing room where my father lay in an elegant mahogany casket, likely made in his own factory. He looked smaller than I remembered, his face peaceful but waxen. I stood there, tears flowing freely, all the words I'd never said crowding my throat. "I'm sorry, Dad," I whispered. "I'm sorry we lost each other." Well, look who decided to show up. I turned to find Thomas in the doorway, impeccably dressed in an expensive black suit, his face a mask of controlled hostility. "Hello, Thomas. I'm sorry for your loss." "Our loss," he scoffed. "Where have you been for the last decade? You don't get to claim grief now." "Dad asked for me to be here," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Mr. Harrington told me." Something flickered across Thomas's face, surprise, concern. "Harrington should have checked with me first," he muttered. Dad wasn't thinking clearly toward the end. More people began to arrive, saving me from having to respond. Old family friends, business associates, employees from the factory. Many expressed surprise at seeing me, but their greetings were largely warm. "Gloria, darling, it's been too long." Dad's secretary, Martha, embraced me. "Your father spoke of you often, you know." He did. I couldn't hide my surprise. "Oh, yes, had your design awards framed in his private office. So proud of your success." Each such revelation was a knife twist. Dad had been proud of me, had kept track of my career. It didn't align with the cold, distant man who had rejected my attempts at connection for years. As the viewing continued, I noticed Thomas constantly at my elbow, interrupting whenever anyone spoke to me for too long, steering conversations away from any mention of Dad's feelings toward me. "Dad was so focused on the business these last years," he would interject. "Barely had time for anything else, isn't that right, Bill?" And Bill, or whoever Thomas was addressing, would nod and agree, though often with a puzzled look my way. The most shocking moment came when Dad's oldest friend, Frank Winters, approached me. "Gloria, your dad asked me to give you something if he didn't get the chance," he said quietly, reaching into his pocket. Thomas appeared instantly at my side. "Frank, now isn't the time. Family matters should wait until after the funeral." Frank looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. "Of course you're right. We'll talk later, Gloria." But later never came. Thomas kept Frank occupied for the remainder of the viewing, and when I looked for him afterward, he had already left. As the viewing wound down, Mr. Harrington, the lawyer, arrived. He nodded solemnly to me across the room before being cornered by Thomas. Their conversation appeared intense, with Thomas doing most of the talking, gesturing emphatically, while Mr. Harrington maintained a professional poker face. "The funeral's tomorrow at St. Mark's," Thomas told me curtly as I was leaving. "10 a.m. Don't be late." It wasn't an invitation so much as a command. The estranged daughter would be permitted to attend, but only on the family's terms, Thomas's terms. Back at my hotel, I called Jackson and broke down completely. "It's worse than I imagined," I sobbed. "Thomas is controlling everything, even who I talk to. And there are all these hints that Dad might have cared more than I knew, but I can't get straight answers from anyone." "Breathe, Gloria," Jackson soothed. "Tomorrow will be hard, but you're there for your father, not for Thomas. Focus on saying your goodbyes." I just keep thinking about what could have been all the years we lost. I know, love, but regret doesn't change the past. All you can do now is honor his memory and find your own peace. I fell into an exhausted sleep, dreaming of Dad's face, not as it had looked in the casket, but alive and laughing, telling me we would fix everything, that he had never stopped loving me. I woke with tears on my pillow and a hollow ache in my chest. The morning of the funeral dawned bright and clear, mockingly beautiful for such a somber day. I dressed carefully in a simple black dress, applying just enough makeup to hide the evidence of my sleepless night. The church was already filling when I arrived, the Parker name drawing the community out in force. I hesitated at the entrance, suddenly uncertain where I should sit. As the estranged daughter did, I belong in the family pew, or should I find a seat further back? The decision was made for me when an usher approached. "Ms. Parker, the family is seated in the front row, if you'll follow me." I felt the weight of stairs as I walked down the center aisle. Thomas, already seated with his wife Natalie and their two children, looked up with barely concealed annoyance. He had left a space at the far end of the pew as far from himself as possible, while still technically including me in the family section. The service was formal and impersonal. The minister spoke of Dad's business accomplishments, his contributions to the community, his generosity to the church. Nothing about his love of fishing, his terrible jokes, his habit of singing off key in the shower. Nothing about the man I had known as a child. Various business associates gave eulogies, painting a picture of Richard Parker as a titan of industry, a visionary, a mentor. Not one person mentioned his role as a father. When the minister asked if any family members wished to speak, Thomas stood and walked to the pulpit. He spoke about carrying on Dad's legacy, about the future of Parker Furniture under his leadership, about Dad's dream that the company remain in family hands. He managed to talk for 10 minutes without a single personal memory or emotion. And now, as we say goodbye to our father, Thomas concluded pointedly, using our, while looking directly at me, we remember his dedication to family values and tradition. I felt sick at the hypocrisy. This was not a tribute. It was Thomas staking his claim before the community. I had prepared a few words, memories of Dad from before our estrangement, but when the minister looked expectantly at me, Thomas quickly interjected. "I believe that concludes the family remarks," he said firmly. "We should proceed with the service." The minister, clearly uncomfortable with the tension, nodded and continued. After the service came the procession to the cemetery. Thomas arranged for me to ride in a separate car from the immediate family, placing me with distant cousins I barely remembered. "Such a shame you and your father weren't close these past years," one elderly aunt remarked. "Thomas was such a comfort to him, especially during the illness." I bit my tongue, unwilling to air family grievances with virtual strangers. At the graveside, we gathered under a green canopy as the minister said final prayers. The casket gleamed in the sunlight-polished wood, a testament to the craftsmanship Dad had built his life around. As the service concluded and people began to drift toward their cars, Thomas approached me, his voice pitched just loud enough for nearby mourners to hear. "I suppose you'll be coming to the house now. Dad would have wanted the appearance of family unity, though we both know why you're really here." "And why is that, Thomas?" I asked, tired of his games. He smiled coldly. "She's just here for the money," he announced to the small group of people within earshot. "Dad's going to cut her off anyway. He told me so before he died." Gasps and uncomfortable murmurs rippled through the lingering mourners. My face burned with humiliation and anger. "That's not true," I began, but Thomas was already walking away, accepting condolences from business associates who had witnessed the exchange. I stood frozen by my father's grave, caught between fleeing the scene and defending myself to people who had already decided to believe Thomas. "Ms. Parker." I turned to find Mr. Harrington at my elbow, his expression unreadable. "The reading of the will is scheduled for 3 o'clock at your father's home. Your presence is required." "I don't think I'm welcome there," I said quietly. "Nevertheless, your father was explicit about your attendance." He hesitated, then added in a lower voice, "There are aspects of your father's final wishes that may surprise everyone." Before I could ask what he meant, Thomas called out from several yards away, "Harrington, a word, please." The lawyer excused himself, leaving me with the unsettling feeling that there was much more to Dad's passing than a simple transfer of assets to his son. I drove to my childhood home in a daze, parking on the street rather than in the long circular driveway already filled with expensive cars. The house looked exactly as I remembered it, grand and imposing a showcase for Parker Furniture's finest pieces. Inside, the wake was in full swing. The living room and dining room were filled with people eating, drinking, sharing stories. Thomas held court in the center, playing the grieving son with practiced precision. I slipped in quietly, hoping to avoid another scene, but Thomas spotted me immediately. He beckoned imperiously, and against my better judgment, I approached. "Everyone," he announced, glass raised. "My sister has graciously joined us all the way from California. Let's show her some good old Connecticut hospitality." His tone made it clear this was not a genuine welcome, but a performance for the assembled guests. Before I could respond, a commotion at the front door drew everyone's attention. Mr. Harrington had arrived, accompanied by a young man carrying what looked like projection equipment. The lawyer surveyed the room, nodded in satisfaction at the large gathering, and addressed the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention. Before we proceed with the formal reading of Richard Parker's will, he left instructions for a video message to be played for his family and close friends. Thomas frowned, clearly caught off guard. A video? You never mentioned a video. Your father recorded it privately with me last month, when he knew his time was growing short. He was quite specific about the circumstances of its viewing. The young assistant began setting up a projector and screen in the living room, and people moved furniture to accommodate the unexpected presentation. I found myself pushed to the front directly across from Thomas, whose face had gone from confused to concerned. Before we begin, Mr. Harrington continued, Mr. Parker asked that both of his children be present and that as many of his business associates and friends as possible witness this message. I see those conditions have been met. He nodded to his assistant, who dimmed the lights and started the projection. A moment later, my father's face filled the screen. Dad looked thin and pale, clearly in the late stages of his illness, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He sat in his study, the familiar bookshelves behind him, a Parker Furniture logo visible on the wall. If you're watching this, he began, his voice stronger than his appearance suggested, then I've passed on, and Elliot is fulfilling his promise to me. I have some things to say that couldn't wait for the official will reading. He paused, taking a sip of water, then looked directly into the camera as if he could see us all gathered there. First, to my daughter Gloria. I owe you the deepest apology a father can offer. I believed lies about you for too many years, and by the time I discovered the truth, my pride and shame kept me from reaching out to make amends. I gasped, tears springing to my eyes. Around me, the room had gone completely silent. I want everyone here to know that I never intended to cut my daughter out of my life or my legacy. The distance between us was based on falsehoods I was too blind to question until recently. Dad's gaze seemed to shift, and I knew he was looking toward where Thomas would be standing. Truth reveals itself, he said firmly, the 3 words hanging in the air like a proclamation. Thomas made a strangled noise, and several people turned to look at him. His face had drained of color. 3 months ago, Dad continued, I discovered that Thomas had been intercepting Gloria's calls and emails for years. He had been altering her messages to me and my messages to her. The birthday cards I thought had gone unanswered, the invitations I believed had been declined. The harsh words I thought had been exchanged. None of it was real. Murmurs of shock rippled through the room. I stood frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. I found a box in Thomas's office containing dozens of letters and cards from Gloria that I never received. I found draft emails on the company's server that had been altered before being sent in my name. Dad paused, visibly gathering his strength. But most disturbing of all, I discovered financial irregularities that suggested Thomas had been embezzling from the company for years, using those funds to pressure me into making him the sole heir to the Parker legacy. The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Thomas lunged toward the projection equipment. This is slander. He was confused at the end, the medication. Mr. Parker, Mr. Harrington said firmly, stepping between Thomas and the projector. Your father anticipated this reaction and left very clear instructions. If you interfere with this message, you will forfeit all claims under the will. Thomas froze, caught between rage and self-preservation. On screen, Dad continued. I've instructed Elliot to provide the board with full documentation of these financial discrepancies after my passing. But I wanted everyone to hear directly from me that Gloria has always been a loving daughter who tried repeatedly to maintain our relationship, despite the obstacles placed in her way. He looked down briefly, composing himself, then faced the camera again, with renewed determination. To ensure justice is done, I have made certain provisions in my will that Elliot will outline shortly. But know this, Parker Furniture was built to be a family legacy, one based on honesty, integrity, and craftsmanship. Those values matter more than blood relation when blood has been tainted by deceit. Dad took another sip of water, his hand visibly shaking now. Gloria, if you're watching, please know that I never stopped loving you. I have followed your design career with immense pride. The father-daughter breakfast, those were the happiest moments of my life. I'm so sorry we lost those years that can never be recovered. I was openly sobbing now, one hand pressed to my mouth. And to everyone else present, thank you for being part of my life and the Parker Furniture family. I ask you to support the changes that are coming and to remember that sometimes the truth arrives too late for reconciliation in life, but perhaps not too late for justice in what follows. The screen went dark, and the room remained in stunned silence for several heartbeats before erupting into chaos. Thomas shoved past the lawyer, heading straight for me, his face contorted with rage. "You did this," he hissed. "You turned him against me at the end. I did nothing," I said, finding my voice at last. "I didn't even know he was in remission." "You kept that from me, too." "Mr. Parker," Mr. Harrington interjected smoothly, "I suggest you compose yourself before I continue with the formal reading of the will. There are many witnesses present." Thomas glanced around at the shocked faces of business associates and friends, clearly realizing how his behavior appeared in light of Dad's revelations. He retreated to a corner of the room, whispering furiously with his wife. Mr. Harrington cleared his throat and addressed the gathering. "If everyone would please be seated, I will now proceed with the reading of Richard Parker's last will and testament." What followed was as shocking as the video. Dad had completely revised his will in the final months of his life. Instead of leaving everything to Thomas, as everyone had assumed, he had divided his estate in a way that reflected his newfound understanding of the truth. I received 50% ownership in Parker Furniture, with Thomas retaining 30% and the remaining 20% distributed among longtime employees. The family home was left entirely to me, with specific instructions that Thomas was to vacate the property within 30 days. Most surprisingly, Dad had established a special design division within the company, funded for a minimum of 5 years with me named as creative director, if I chose to accept the position. Additionally, Mr. Harrington read from the formal document, "I have instructed our company attorneys to conduct a full forensic audit of all financial transactions authorized by Thomas Parker over the past 10 years. Should this audit confirm my personal findings of financial malfeasance, appropriate legal action is to be taken regardless of family connection." Thomas stormed out before the reading was completed, his wife and children trailing behind him. The remaining guests sat in uncomfortable silence as Mr. Harrington finished detailing Dad's bequest to various charities and employees. As people began to leave, many approached me with awkward condolences and congratulations, clearly unsure how to respond to the dramatic revelations of the afternoon. Martha, Dad's secretary, hugged me tightly. "Your father changed so much these last months, Gloria. After he found those letters, it was like he became a different person. All he talked about was making things right with you." "Why didn't he call me directly?" I asked the question that had been burning in my mind. "He tried," she said sadly. "But he was afraid you wouldn't believe him after all this time, that you'd think it was just deathbed manipulation. He wanted to gather all the evidence first to show you he understood the full extent of what had happened. Then the cancer came back suddenly, and there wasn't time." Mr. Harrington approached as the last guests were leaving. "Ms. Parker, your father left something personal for you as well. If you'll come with me to his study." I followed him upstairs to the wood-paneled room that had always been Dad's sanctuary. It looked unchanged from my childhood memories. The same leather chair, the same wall of books, the same photos on the desk. I picked up one I didn't recognize, a recent professional photo of me that must have been taken from my design firm's website. "He kept track of you in his own way," Mr. Harrington said quietly, "even before he discovered Thomas's deception." He unlocked a desk drawer and removed a sealed envelope with my name written in Dad's distinctive handwriting. "He wrote this the day before he recorded the video. He asked that you read it in private." As Mr. Harrington left me alone in the study, I sank into Dad's chair, turning the envelope over in my hands. Whatever was inside represented Dad's final private thoughts for me alone. I broke the seal with trembling fingers and began to read. "My dearest Gloria." The letter began in Dad's strong, precise handwriting, though I could see places where his hand had trembled. "By the time you read this, I will be gone. and you will have heard the public explanation of what happened between us. But there are things I wanted to say to you that are for your ears only father to daughter. First, I want you to know that discovering Thomas's betrayal was both the most painful and most liberating moment of my life. Painful because I realized how many years I had lost with you, and liberating because I finally understood that the distance between us wasn't your choice or even mine, but the result of a calculated deception. I found your letters by accident. Thomas had left his office door unlocked when he went to lunch, and I was looking for a contract we had discussed earlier. In his bottom drawer, I found a box containing every card letter and note you had sent me over the years, many of them unopened. There were ultrasound photos of Lily that I had never seen, drawings she had made for her grandpa wedding photos, where another man stood in my place to walk you down the aisle. I sat on the floor of his office and read them all one after another, discovering the daughter I had been led to believe had abandoned me. Instead, I found a woman who had never stopped reaching out, never stopped trying, never stopped loving her father despite years of rejection. When Thomas returned and found me there, surrounded by your letters, he tried to explain it away. He said he had been protecting me from your manipulations, your attempts to get back into my good graces just to claim your share of the company. But I could see the truth in his eyes. He had never expected me to find those letters, never expected to be caught in his lies. That night, I began investigating other aspects of our relationship that had felt wrong over the years. I checked the phone records and discovered that on days when Thomas told me you had called and said hateful things, there were no calls from your number at all. I had our IT department recover deleted emails and found the original drafts of messages to you that had been altered before sending. And then, because my trust was completely broken, I began looking at the company finances. What I found there was even more disturbing. Thomas had been systematically siphoning funds, small amounts at first, but growing bolder over time. He had created fake vendor accounts, approved fraudulent invoices, and manipulated the books in ways that, as your brother correctly calculated, I was too technologically inexperienced to detect. I confronted him with evidence of both the personal and financial betrayals. Instead of remorse, he showed only anger at being caught and fear of the consequences. He threatened to destroy the company's reputation if I exposed him to claim I was suffering from dementia brought on by my illness and medication. He reminded me that he knew every aspect of the business operation and could sabotage it from within if I tried to remove him. So I bided my time working with Elliot to document everything and revise my will while pretending to Thomas that I had accepted his explanations. The cancer returning was not part of my plan. It forced me to accelerate everything to make arrangements that would ensure justice after I was gone, rather than witnessing it myself. My greatest regret is that I didn't reach out to you directly as soon as I discovered the truth. Pride and shame held me back. How could I admit that I had been so thoroughly deceived about my own daughter? How could I explain throwing away years of our relationship? Because I was too blind to see what was happening. By the time I worked up the courage, the cancer had returned with a vengeance, and I knew any overture would seem like the desperate act of a dying man, rather than the genuine remorse of a father who had finally seen the truth. So I chose this path instead, hoping that the public acknowledgement of the wrong done to you, combined with this private explanation, might give you some measure of peace. There's a leather portfolio in the bottom drawer of this desk. Inside, you'll find the designs you sent me in college, the ones I said were just nice drawings. I had planned to surprise you by producing a small run of those pieces to show you that I valued your talent and vision. Thomas canceled the project as soon as I delegated authority to him during my first round of treatment. The original designs are still there, along with the production notes I made. Perhaps now you can bring them to life yourself as part of your role in the company if you choose to accept it. I know that nothing can restore the years we've lost. I won't see Lily grow up or get to know the woman you've become. I can't undo the pain my blindness caused you. But I hope that in clearing your name and acknowledging the truth, I've given you back something of value, something that might help you move forward without the weight of undeserved rejection. I love you, my glorious Gloria. I always did, even when I couldn't show it. I hope that somewhere, somehow you can find it in your heart to forgive a foolish old man who couldn't see what was right in front of him until it was almost too late. All my love now and always, Dad. I clutched the letter to my chest, tears flowing freely, as years of hurt and confusion gave way to grief mixed with a strange sense of vindication. Dad had loved me after all. He had seen the truth before the end. It didn't erase the lost years, but it changed everything about how I would remember him. A soft knock at the study door interrupted my thoughts. I quickly wiped my eyes and called, "Come in." Thomas stood in the doorway, his expression a mixture of anger and desperation. "You think you've won," he said flatly. "You think Dad's little video and new will change anything." "This isn't about winning, Thomas," I replied, tucking Dad's letter into my purse. "It's about the truth finally coming out." "The truth," he sneered. "You always were his favorite, you know. Even when you ran off to California, abandoned the family business, he kept comparing me to his precious Gloria." "That's not true. You had him all to yourself for years. You turned him against me." "I protected what was mine." Thomas's voice rose. "I built this company with him while you were drawing pretty pictures 3,000 miles away. You stole from the company. You lied to our father on his deathbed. How can you possibly justify that?" Thomas stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "I'm not going to let you waltz back in and take everything I've worked for," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "The board respects me. The employees follow my leadership. You're an outsider. The board just heard Dad accuse you of embezzlement. The forensic audit will confirm it. Your position isn't as secure as you think. Audits take time. Evidence can disappear. Witnesses can change their stories." His smile was cold. "By the time any legal proceedings conclude, the company could be in ruins. Is that what you want for Dad's legacy?" I recognized the threat for what it was. Thomas was offering a deal unspoken but clear. He would destroy the company rather than face justice. "What do you want, Thomas?" I asked directly. "A reasonable settlement. You keep the house since you're so sentimental about it. I maintain majority control of the company. We issue a joint statement clarifying that Dad was confused at the end, affected by his medication. We move forward as business partners, keeping the family drama private." For a moment, I was tempted. It would be easier, cleaner, less painful than a prolonged legal battle. I could still have a place in the company, could still honor Dad's memory in my own way. Then I remembered the letters hidden for years, the lies told, the systematic destruction of my relationship with my father. I thought of Dad discovering the truth too late, using his final acts to try to set things right. "No," I said firmly. "I won't help you cover this up. Dad wanted the truth revealed, and I'm going to honor that, whatever the cost." Thomas's face hardened. "You'll regret this decision. I know things about the company, about how it really operates, that would shock you. If I go down, I won't go alone. Then that's your choice. But I'm not afraid of the truth anymore, Thomas. Not like you." He stared at me for a long moment, perhaps seeing for the first time that I was no longer the easily intimidated little sister he could manipulate. "This isn't over," he said, finally turning to leave. "Actually, it is," I replied. "You have 30 days to move out of this house according to the will. I suggest you start packing." After Thomas stormed out, I sat in Dad's chair for a long time, letting the events of the day sink in. Everything I had believed about my estrangement from Dad had been built on Thomas's lies. The years we had lost could never be recovered. But at least I now knew the truth. Dad had loved me, had been proud of me, had tried in his final months to make amends. I opened the desk drawer he had mentioned in his letter and found the leather portfolio. Inside were indeed my old furniture designs, with Dad's handwritten notes in the margins. "Beautiful balance," he had written on one. "Innovative but practical" on another. Tucked behind them was a production schedule and cost estimate dated just before his first cancer diagnosis. He had truly planned to produce my designs as a surprise. Holding those pages, seeing my youthful creativity through my father's appreciative eyes, I felt a connection to him that transcended death. In these notes and plans, in his final letter and video statement, Dad had left me a priceless gift, the knowledge that I had never lost his love, only his presence. The weeks following the funeral were a whirlwind of legal meetings, company briefings, and emotional discoveries. True to his threat, Thomas refused to go quietly. He hired aggressive attorneys who challenged every aspect of Dad's revised will, claiming undue influence and diminished capacity. But Mr. Harrington had anticipated this and had arranged for Dad's doctors to certify his mental competence when the will was signed. The forensic audit of the company finances proceeded despite Thomas's attempts to block it. The evidence of his embezzlement was even more extensive than Dad had known, reaching back almost to the time I had left for college. The board of directors, facing the undeniable documentation, had no choice but to remove Thomas from his position and cooperate with the criminal investigation that followed. Thomas and Natalie moved out of the family home before the 30-day deadline, leaving it in deliberate disarray. I spent weeks sorting through the mess, discovering small treasures amid the chaos. In Dad's bedroom closet, I found a box containing newspaper clippings of my design awards and accomplishments carefully preserved. In his nightstand was a framed photo of Lily taken from the birth announcement I had sent, worn around the edges, as if frequently handled. The most startling discovery came when the company IT team recovered Dad's deleted emails. There were dozens of draft messages to me that had never been sent, composed during his final months as he grappled with the truth of Thomas's deception. "My dear Gloria," one began, "I don't know how to begin to apologize for what has happened between us. The fault is entirely mine for not seeing what was right before my eyes." Another read, "I saw your latest furniture collection online today. The Harmony series shows your extraordinary talent. I always knew you had a unique vision, even when I failed to support it properly." Each unsent message was another piece of the puzzle, another glimpse into Dad's struggle to find a way back to me before time ran out. I decided to move my family temporarily to Connecticut to deal with the aftermath of Dad's passing and Thomas's criminal case. Jackson took a sabbatical from his architecture firm, and we enrolled Lily in the same elementary school I had attended as a child. Living in my childhood home was both healing and painful. Every room held memories of happier times, but also reminded me of the years of estrangement. I found myself talking to Dad as I moved through the house, telling him about my life, introducing him to Jackson and Lily in the only way now possible. 3 months after the funeral, Thomas pleaded guilty to reduced charges of financial fraud to avoid a more severe sentence for systematic embezzlement. The plea agreement required full restitution to the company and prohibited him from ever serving as an officer in any business. His reputation in this community was destroyed. His carefully constructed image of the devoted son and brilliant businessman shattered beyond repair. I took no pleasure in Thomas's downfall. The brother I had once looked up to, the family I had longed to reconnect with, were permanently altered by his actions and their consequences. The truth had brought justice, but not wholeness. Frank Winters, Dad's old friend, who had been prevented from speaking to me at the viewing, finally reached out. We met for coffee in the small diner where Dad and I used to have our Sunday breakfasts. "Your father was different in those last months," Frank told me, sliding a small box across the table. "After he found those letters, it was like a veil had been lifted. He talked about you constantly, about how he had failed you." Inside the box was Mom's engagement ring, a delicate sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. "He wanted you to have this," Frank continued. "He told me Gloria should have had this years ago, to remember that she comes from love, even when that love was imperfectly expressed." I slipped the ring onto my right hand, feeling a connection to both parents I had thought long severed. "Did he know at the end that I still loved him too?" I asked, voice breaking. "Oh, yes," Frank assured me. "Those designs you sent over the years, the cards, the photos of your daughter, they told him everything he needed to know. He just ran out of time to make it right in person." Over the following months, I worked with the Parker Furniture executive team to stabilize the company after the turbulence of Thomas's removal. Many were initially skeptical of me, viewing me as an outsider despite my family name. But as they saw my commitment to preserving Dad's legacy while bringing fresh vision to the company, most came around. I established the design division Dad had outlined in his will, naming it the Amanda Parker Design Studio in Mom's honor. The first collection we produced included updated versions of those college designs Dad had saved, blending traditional craftsmanship with contemporary aesthetics. The line sold out within weeks of its launch. Gradually, I connected with employees who shared stories of Dad I had never known. The factory foreman told me how Dad had paid for his daughter's cancer treatments when insurance denied the claim. The receptionist recalled Dad bringing coffee to the entire office every Monday morning, remembering each person's preference without being reminded. These glimpses of Dad's character helped me understand that while Thomas had succeeded in driving a wedge between us, he hadn't fundamentally changed who my father was. The good man I remembered from childhood had still existed, just walled off from me by Thomas's systematic deception. 6 months after the funeral, Jackson and I made the decision to split our time between California and Connecticut, maintaining both our home there and the family house. Parker Furniture had weathered the scandal of Thomas's crimes, and with new leadership and direction was thriving again. I established a scholarship fund in Dad's name at the California College of the Arts specifically for students interested in furniture design. It felt like the perfect way to honor both his legacy and the talent he had belatedly recognized in me. The hardest part of healing was accepting that I would never have the conversation with Dad I had longed for, never hear him apologize directly, never be able to tell him I forgave him. The letter and video were powerful, but they were still one-sided communications. "It's okay to be angry at him still," Jackson said one night, as we sat in Dad's study, now converted to a home office we shared. "Recognizing the truth at the end doesn't erase all those years." "I'm not angry anymore," I realized as I said it. "I'm sad for both of us, for what we missed. But I understand now that he was a victim of Thomas's manipulation too. We both were. And Thomas? Have you forgiven him?" I considered the question carefully. "Not yet. Maybe not ever completely, but I'm not letting his actions define my life anymore. That's its own kind of freedom." Learning to let go of the pain of rejection to replace it with the knowledge that I had always been loved, if imperfectly, was a daily process. Some days were easier than others. Sometimes I would find another small reminder of Dad's belated attempts to reconnect, like the subscription to a design magazine in my name that continued to arrive at the house ordered just weeks before his death. Other days, the weight of lost time felt crushing. But through it all, I held on to the truth that had finally been revealed. Dad and I had both been deceived, both been robbed of our relationship by someone who placed greed and jealousy above family bonds. In his final act of courage, Dad had chosen to expose that truth, rather than letting it remain buried, giving me the chance to reclaim my place in the family legacy and my understanding of his love. A year after Dad's passing, we held a small ceremony at the factory to dedicate a new community workshop space in his honor. As I stood before the gathered employees and community members, I felt Dad's presence strongly. "My father believed that craftsmanship was about more than making beautiful furniture," I told the audience. "It was about creating something that would outlast us, something that would connect generations through shared appreciation of quality and beauty." Today, we honor that belief by opening this space where future generations can learn the skills he valued so highly. After the ceremony, an elderly craftsman who had worked for Parker Furniture for over 40 years approached me. "Your dad would be so proud of what you've done," he said, his weathered hands clasping mine. "Not just with the business, but with how you've handled everything. Truth and forgiveness, that's what he valued most in the end." Truth and forgiveness. The words echoed Dad's final message. Truth reveals itself. Sometimes the truth comes too late for complete healing, too late to restore all that was lost. But even a delayed truth has power, the power to rewrite the stories we tell ourselves about our past and the people who shaped us. I will always wish for more time with Dad, for the chance to build new memories to place alongside the childhood ones I cherish. I will always wonder what might have been if Thomas's deception had been uncovered sooner. But I've learned to find peace in knowing that at the end, Dad found his way back to the truth of our relationship. He died knowing I had never stopped loving him, never stopped reaching out across the distance that separated us. And I live with the knowledge that I was always my father's daughter, always loved, always valued, even when circumstances and manipulation prevented that love from reaching me. It's a healing truth, a foundation upon which I can build the rest of my life, and my own family's story. What's your experience with family secrets and reconciliation? Have you ever discovered a truth that changed how you viewed your past relationships? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that. Sometimes, even when it seems too late, truth can find its way to the surface and begin the healing process. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the most powerful 3 words aren't "I love you," but truth reveals itself.